Trapdoor. Things are like torpedoes. Gotta remember when you close that, you're live, ready to go. Oh, this thing weighs a ton. You expect so much more of an explosion. That's kind of cool. Whoever invented that ejection system deserves a paid week's vacation. Oh, it's got an audible crack to it too, and the report, you know what I mean? You think by looking at the bullet it would be a very deep sounding thud kind of report, but it's not. It's like a sharp crack. It's freaking damn loud too. Right? Those things are going like 15 feet behind me. Nice. Let's see what one of these looks like. Just make sure the cases look healthy. Yeah, I've got a nice deep primer strike. No ripping, tearing, no failuring. Not even stretching these cases. This thing is right in the prime of its life. Real fun to do shooting drills with it. Milsurp Garage with the Trapdoor Springfield. You don't get much more Milsurp than this. Yes, this was U.S. military issued. This was the rifle we used before the Krag. So, the 03 Springfield bolt action rifle, you've seen that thing. That thing was used in World War II. Well, before that, we used the Krag. And then before that, we had this. So this thing was fighting Indians. This thing was the Spanish-American War. We were fighting the Spanish-American War against Mausers, stripper clip fed 5-round internal magazine Mausers. So you can kind of see why everybody started coveting the Mauser, because if you didn't have a Mauser back then, this is what you were using, kind of thing. Not to mean that this thing is necessarily bad, but this was, at this time, was really like an older design. So this was just kind of like a conversion. The Trapdoor Springfields were kind of like conversions from muzzle loading rifles, where you would actually force a ball and the powder charge down the barrel with a ramrod, and you actually put a little percussion cap here that would be a lot like the cap guns that you'd fire as a kid, and that percussion cap would set off the main powder charge, black powder then, and blast the ball out of the barrel, and you would take that little percussion cap off, throw it away, do the whole procedure again. These were modified originally. The first of these, I think it was 1865, were modified where they took that percussion cap thing off and milled out an area here where they made this trapdoor to open up, so you would have access to the breech, called a breech loader. So that was the big thing, that it was like a breech loader. the patent was for that. And here I have some of my realistic snap caps in the 4570 is this caliber, in the 4570 round. And you would slip one of these in here, close it, and bang. And then you would just open it up and kick out the empty. In my shooting video that you just saw right here before this video, I was definitely doing it wrong. It's not really the way that you're supposed to operate this thing. You're supposed to, after you fire, or whatever, even on the first round, you're supposed to just go to half cock here, 2 clicks back, and then you're supposed to load it, so that this way, when you close it, it's not really ready to fire yet. You still have that 1 click to go before you're actually ready to rock. So at the range there, I was just pulling it all the way back and loading, and then ejecting, pulling it all the way back, loading. And it's true, it's not really the proper way to do it, because when you're closing this, if you should hit the trigger like that, it's going to go off before you're ready, you know what I mean? So, but at half cock like this, when you close it, you can do whatever until you get into position, and right before you're ready to fire, you just go that one last click. And I just have a brass here to show you. It's kicking out pretty strong, and it's kicking out a whole a whole bullet and everything in this case. But if it was just the brass, that sends that sends that pretty far. That design works really well. And these snap caps, by the way, see, this is a fun rifle to just just play with these things. But let's do this right and have it at half cock. It's interesting to see how how it operates like that. Pretty cool. These snap caps, of course, are available from realisticsnapcaps.com, where if you use coupon code MilsurpGarage, one word, MILSURPGARAGE, you get 10% off and free shipping. Treat yourself to a New Year's gift. Hopefully some of you guys took advantage of that deal for Christmas gifts. I couldn't imagine a better Christmas gift than a bunch of snap caps. Well, let's delve into this one a little bit. I'm going to tell you why. Like, history-wise, to tell you the truth, the history with these things is so crazy. They've been through so many incarnations and so many changes. I just like to show you what I got, why I bought this one. I did a ton of research before I bought this. I bought it quite a while ago. And there's a reason why I bought this specific model. This is the model 1888 Round Rod Bayonet Rifle. That is the actual name for this one. Its manufacture date is 1893. It is like the model. They have different model numbers, and the model number that's on here written is, I forgot, U.S. model 1884. So it's the model 1884. They had been different models through the years. This one, the production date is production year was 1893, which was the last production year. 4,760 were made. And I purposefully looked for one with this late production date, and I'll explain to you why in a bit. These things are, like I said, they're in 4570. And what else do we have here? Oh, well, let's just break it down and show you what we got here. We have a butt plate trapdoor here. It's funny that there's a trapdoor in the trapdoor. But inside of here, you see that stuff doesn't come out readily. So let me turn it around this way. It'll be a little bit easier. And let me take another look here. easy that's going to be to get out. I have to grab something here. So what goes in here is a tool, and the tool actually has its own. Here's the rest. And this, I think, is a cartridge remover. I don't know if the case, maybe it's if the case gets stuck. The cartridge case gets stuck inside. I think originally they were copper, the cases, the black powder, because you could fire with these. You could fire black powder or smokeless powder in these. This was like right during the changeover, and I think originally these cases were copper, not brass. I think they had problems with the copper, so they issued one of these with it. I think what you did with this was, if I remember correctly, you put it in and you. I don't really remember. I'm sure somebody knows and they want to reach through the screen and smack me, but this somehow extracted the case. I think this went on the cleaning rod. Oh yeah, the bayonet also functions as the cleaning rod. I bet you it connects onto there. If I remember, we'll take a look in a little bit. But this tool, this is the model 1879. This tool even has its own model number. And that's interesting. And that goes in here. It fits in specifically into these two recesses that it's made for back there. So that's pretty cool. Then we have a marking on here that's, I believe, a Spanish-American War marking, I believe, for military. Like I said, there were different incarnations of these, and this trigger guard, this trigger group like this one-piece trigger guard like that, this Buffington rear sight it's called. I like that. And there were definitely changes along the line as to how this trapdoor part was actually produced and made. And if you have the right literature or you look, see the serial number is in the 565,000 range. Is that a 565? 563. 563,000 range, which is way late production, which is what I was looking for. One interesting thing about the sight is you could see how, if it was tipped up, right, and there's also adjustment here for windage to move it back and forth. That's rare. You don't often see that. And then this right here loosens up, and that's what you would raise and lower this part here. And if you notice, by raising it, it also moves off to the left slightly. You see that? That's interesting too, right? To correct for something, I guess. It corrects for windage. And then there's all different apertures that you would look through here. There's an aperture here on the top, one on the bottom, that you could use this peep sight here, if you can see that. There's like a peep sight here, or you could use that one, so it shows arrows here that you would line up for the amount of yards that you would be going for here. But what a very precision sight. You would assume that, see, they were very into marksmanship back during this period. It wasn't about throwing a ton of lead downrange. This thing was just a single shot rifle that you manually reloaded one round at a time, and with a sight that's so precise. And so, you like, were these guys going to war, or were these guys, like, doing target shooting where they could take 10 minutes between shots? It was a different philosophy back then. That's why even after this rifle, they went to the Krag, where it was like they weren't even then interested in, big box magazines and throwing tons of lead down range. You were even loading those things kind of one at a time into a box on the side of the rifle, and they still had these cutoff switches where you would be able to actually use them. So you would be using rifles, like even the '03 Springfield had a cutoff switch where you would still be functioning the same as you would be with a rifle from the 1860s, 1870s. I mean, that's amazing, right? But that was the philosophy back then. So let's move into this bayonet here. Let's see, how would I be able to... I think we better go back the other way. Here we go. Now this bayonet, and also this this front sight cover here, this kind of pops off. This is removable. I almost had it there. It's not the easiest thing to take off, so I'm just going to leave it. But it's like a snap-on front sight cover. This is something that's from this era. This 1893 time is when they had that. And they had been through... One good way to date these things and to classify them is by going by these bayonets. Man, they had been through so many different incarnations. I'm going to show you later when we take a look through my my books. But with this one, if you see, there's like a dual, is like a thumb index finger kind of thing you got to have going on here with this particular one. They weren't all like this, and this is knurled here. So you have, let's see if I'd be able to stand it up. Yeah, so you have like a thumb index finger thing going on, and then you pull. And this is the bayonet, is this rod. And don't think you pull out. A lot of people I see, they pull out till it stops, and then they think that they're where they got to go. But you see there's all this movement here. If you see, there's another indent here. So there's two of these indents. You only put the first indent in. You got to keep going. See, if you keep going a little bit. Now, you heard that. That's both indents in there. So now that's the strongest you're going to have it in, and that's the length of it. And the tip, you can see the tip is not really like necessarily the sharpest thing in the world. Kind of looks like a Phillips head screwdriver a little bit, but it does have a point. You got a point. But it's you can wiggle it on here. You would be bending this if you really went nuts, stabbing the crap out of people all the time religiously with it. You would bend it up. It's not the strongest thing in the world. And with a rifle like this, with this amount of time between shots, you would have to really rely on a bayonet. So, I mean, I suppose it did its job. I'm sure there were a lot of people very unhappy with getting impaled by these things, but it didn't last long. It carried through to the '03 Springfield, that rod bayonet, but it didn't last long, and they went to a knife blade bayonet, which I would think would just be a little bit more, would just do a little bit more damage to the adversary and less damage to the rifle or the bayonet itself, I would think. So this one. So why did I go with this one? Well, for that, we have to go to the books. So let's take the rifle off the table for a minute. Let's introduce my '03 Springfield books. All right. Book 1 and Book 2. All right. These are Frasca and Hill. The first book was copyright 1980. And it's a wealth of information. Trust me. If you're into these things, I mean, it starts at the beginning. You know what I mean? And you're learning about a whole bunch of old stuff. We're working our way through the mid to late 1880s here through this book, with every little thing, the ammo, the ammo pouches, even he gets into different types. This wasn't the only bayonet. They originally had some other types of bayonets that clipped across the barrel. And here's all different kinds of incarnations, and they talk about how when they first started the conversions from the percussion cap and everything. These look like the books that they gave to the soldiers or whatever. And a lot of interesting stuff in here. Tables, charts, all kind of stuff. That's book 1. They call that the trade edition. I had a little bit more interest myself in book number 2. And check these books out. They're not crazy expensive. I don't know. I haven't looked in a long time. When I bought them, they weren't insane because availability was there. With these books, a lot of times you're looking for books that are out of print. Forget it. They're like $400 or $500 just for like one book. You know what I mean? Like the Crag book was like that. I have a few. I should do a video just on my books, but I do have some that were really tough. And that's one for the Swedish rifles. What was that called? I happen to have that laying around right here. This Crown Jewels book. This book was out of print for so long, it was so crazy expensive, but then they reprinted it. This collector grade publications here reprinted this book, and it's here, copyright 1916. I think it has a whole new ISBN number and everything. So now it's available again. They try to kind of charge a lot for it because people were used to paying a lot for them when they came across them, but it's nice when they re-release them. But these were kind of been re-released for a long time, and they've been around. So here's the patent. Patent number 49,959 by E.S. Allen, September 19th, 1865, for a breech loading firearm. So, man, you're going way back if your patent is for a breech loading firearm. They're not talking about auto loading firearm. They're just talking about the one bullet that you put in. This is where you put it. You don't have to put it through the muzzle anymore. You don't have to stuff a ball and a patch and whatever else. See, I think back then, like towards the end of the muzzle loading era, that's not my thing. I don't have any muzzle loading guns. I start with smokeless powder kind of. But so this is about as far back as I go. But I think back then it was made a lot easier. You weren't sitting there with like a funnel and a thing full of powder, pouring it in and everything. I think it was like a pat. It was all made up already with the ball, and the powder was wrapped in paper or something, I think, and you just shoved that whole thing down the barrel in one shot. And then put the percussion cap on there and bang. And then you got another one out, you put it in there, you shoved it down the barrel, percussion cap on there, bang. Like it was made faster than what you see in these Civil War like reenactments and stuff where guys fire, put the gun down, and actually start like taking out a little flask full of powder and pouring it in there and stuff. I don't think that was going on, but this was a great innovation to actually. They were modifying guns that were muzzle loaders to be able to do this. So I'm not sure this was a patent or this was the modification, or maybe this was just for the firearm. But this book, I like this book a little bit better because it dealt a little bit more about I think this might be the procedure for modifying it here or whatever. I'm not even sure. I gotta read that again. But yeah, this starts from the very beginning, 1865 prototype. These are like the prototypes and stuff. I kind of dug that. And then from reading this book, getting into it, I saw all the different changes they had made all through the years. Different kinds of sights, different kinds of things, and they found, they went to like the smokeless powder, so they moved from the black powder to smokeless, keeping the 45-70 round. So it was 45-70 405. So it was 45 caliber, 70 grains of powder, 405 grain bullet. That was the black powder round, and that's why, even though it's not a black powder round anymore, it's one of those few that carried through with like a black powder sounding moniker. That 45-70, even though it was smokeless, was just called 45-70 government for that reason, because it was just still a leftover from what we used to call it, you know what I mean, kind of thing. And yeah, here's some of the changes. you know, you as you go through, you see like little things that they change. See, there's different. This is the model 1873, and then he breaks down by year how many they made and what changes were made. So I hadn't yet bought one yet, but then reading this, I'm like, well, why would I buy one of these older ones when you're like, well, they changed this because the breech blocks were failing or the, whatever. I'm just saying, why would you go? The more I read about this, and I'm like, I read about all these changes that they made through the years. These are some cool pictures. Where's the picture of the Indian guy? There's an Indian guy. Where is that? The Indian dude is one of the coolest pictures I've ever seen in a gun book. I don't think I got to it yet. It's coming up. Is that him? No. Oh, well, Indian guy might be a reason for you to buy the book, to see Indian guy. But look at these cool pictures of the Distinguished Marksman, United States Army Rifle Team, 1889. See, that's what it was all about back then, this whole marksman thing. It's like, I guess if you were just some guy, if you invented a gun and you were like, listen, you could spray 500 rounds down range 40 seconds with this, people would be like, what do you need that for? Because you're not a marksman? You can't shoot like a marksman? Man, can't find the Indian guy, bros. It's over. The Indian guy's over. Who's that guy? Well, anyway, sorry, I don't mean to bore you. Here we get to, this is where they start getting into these rod bayonets. You see how they only had one button and it was a different shape. You see, but even that, was a big thing. They're advertising it like it's a big deal, but they were no good. They broke, they fell apart, whatever. And then it started to get closer and closer to, this was changed, that was changed. Then the 1884s, then these were the ones that I had, and I was like, now the Buffington rear sight, here it is. Colonel Buffington. And here's changes that they made to the sight. They changed the control knobs. They changed these clip-on front sight protectors. They had this whole positive cam thing going on here where they were having some issues and they changed something. But hold the phone. I think we moved right out of oh, there's the Indian guy. What's up? Wooden leg. 1927. The carbine appears to be a model 1873 with an 1873 rear sight. Possibly the band is a model 1874. From the hammer spacing, the lock has a 3-notch tumbler. The warrior who fought Custer. Nice. So where did I end up? 1884, 1990. Here it is. 1893. No, that's the cadet rifle. Sorry. So where were we? 1890. Oh, this is carbines. No, the carbines rifles. So where was it? Where's the last one? Cadet, wasn't it? Lost side of my page. But the bottom line is, I went with 81. It was 1893. Why does it say 5,000? This is the cadet rifle. Model 1884. Rifle production 88, 89, 1890. Where's 91, 92, and 93? I don't remember. There was someplace weird in this book that I remember. Oh, that's right, because it's the model 1888 Round Rod Bayonet Rifle. So here's my 1988 rifle production. Is 1893 was 4,760, and here's the last changes that were made, like to this guy or whatever. So when I looked at it, I said, well, that's what I want. I just want the latest possible one I could get. 1893 was the latest date. So you can tell by serial numbers. They break it down someplace else by serial numbers that I knew where it had to be, and that's what I went with because I wanted the latest one I could possibly get, and this was the last year. The reason why I wanted to do that more than anything else is that the older ones, they had these issues where there were a lot of improvements through the years. So I wanted to get one where I feel comfortable buying like this, like PPU 4570, 405 grain smokeless, and just using it. I don't know if you'd want to use like hot loads, but this stuff, I'm pretty confident that this stuff is it's jacketed, and they say you don't get the best accuracy with the jacketed stuff supposedly with these. I've heard that, but I wanted to just be able to use this ammo in it. I didn't want some crazy caliber that I can't find. I didn't want one that would explode. And then mid-years with these things, middle of its life, and towards the end, Springfield had supposedly sold off tons of parts. They just had like huge amounts of parts laying around. So they didn't sell off whole rifles. They weren't selling rifles. They were just selling parts. Like if you wanted to use them to fix a rifle that you had, or that's all they were selling them for were parts. But back then the receiver was just a part like anything else. This was way before 1968, where you had the federal Firearm Act of 1968 was it called. So they would be able to sell the receivers, everything. So there were people taking these parts. There were so many of these parts that were available. They were putting them together, making rifles out of them, and selling them. And they weren't the best because they were just a hodgepodge of thrown together stuff. So, you didn't know if you had, maybe some of these parts weren't even 100% compatible with each other. And not only that, you don't want to get a rifle that has a sight from this year and a trigger guard from that year and a side plate from that year. And, that's all just a mess. Unless specifically you're just looking for one that denotes that historical time of them being sold like that. You know what I mean? If you're looking for a specific example that's like that for that reason. But me, I just wanted a nice one that I knew kind of as close as I could get to one that was built and put together. And there are some numbers that bounce around on this thing that match up. And there aren't many numbers on it, but just from the serial number, and then you read in the book, you should have this kind of hammer, this should look like this rivet should look like that. It has little things. They really break them down because there's a lot of history. And it has all the things that it says it should have on it. It says it should have the U's on the barrel band. It should have this, that R that's on the Buffington site. It says this year it should have an R there. It's for rifle. The C is for carbine. It has the R. So like all these little things that were on it, plus the cartouche, which is kind of beat up. But the cartouche is here that says 1893. And the guy that who was the inspector back then, I have that written down. It's an SWP, stands for Samuel W. Porter, was the Springfield chief armorer during this period. So all of those things matched up, so then you could imagine that you're looking at one that's pretty original. So yeah, it's fun to shoot. I got to tell you, you don't go through ammo like crazy. The 4570 can be a little expensive. But you don't go through ammo like crazy with it. And look at the size of these bullets, I mean. But what's interesting about it is when you shoot it, you think it would be like a real deep kind of thud, you know what I mean? Like a real kind of like a booming report from such a large case. But it really isn't. At least this PPU stuff that I'm shooting, I've used different types of ammo. It's always the same. It's actually a very sharp crack of a report that you really wouldn't think such a large cartridge case was going to come out of there, because it seems kind of like it's like Mike Tyson-ish. He looks all big and huge, and then when he talks, his voice sounds kind of high pitched and passive. So it's like that. The report kind of sounds high pitched and passive out of a huge case like this, but it's pretty cool. It's decently accurate. And I couldn't imagine something more historical. What is this thing seen, right? But that's the story. This might very well be the last one produced. I have no idea. All I know is by the serial number I could tell what date, but I don't have like a range. So if somebody has that, this is in the 563,000 range. So I know that puts it at 1893, the last year of production, but what serial number did they stop with? That's what we got to find out, so if anybody knows. And this is cool. These barrel bands, these springs like that or whatever, you're right into, it's got everything that these old rifles had and have that we love. This long, thin wood that's on the forend here. Look at how it goes all the way to that bayonet contraption up there. It's just all just one single, the same piece of wood. Pretty cool, right? That is nice. And I enjoy it. These things are not crazy expensive either, and you see them all over the place at gun shows. Speaking of gun shows, before I go, I went to a gun show and I was taking a nice video showing different rifles. I even went to like a table of a guy that I've bought stuff before who's always very friendly and very nice. And he was like, "Hey, don't let anybody catch you doing that." Like right in the middle of the video. And I was going to post this video, but I didn't. I decided not. I said, you know what, if I'm going to post a video that someone could watch and object to, and say, "Hey, I don't want to be on there," whatever, then I really shouldn't post it. But because that's what he was saying when he said, "Don't let anybody catch you doing that." He was talking about videoing, and I couldn't understand why. I couldn't get it. And he's like, well, somebody wouldn't, they wouldn't want you to show, what they're selling or what. Well, first of all, nobody knows who any of these people here are. I wasn't showing anybody. It was just showing rifles. I would only assume that people are, if there's all this illegal activity going on here or something, I don't even want to buy anything here. So I don't even know what you're talking about. Like everything seems on the up and up to me. And it's that thing where people, when they see a camera, somehow they just bug out. I watch some of this, like, these First Amendment auditors sometimes, and what interests me about it is I like to see, I'm interested in the reactions of people, and I even have sometimes the same kind of reaction, or had, I'm changing now, but I had sort of like the same kind of reaction to when someone had a camera, that everybody wants to like duck out of the way, or, I mean, I can understand, hey, my hair doesn't look good, or hey, I don't want to be on your video when you're videoing your kids. It's almost like I would duck out of the way out of respect because I don't think they want me in their video, but if somebody's actually out videoing the public specifically just to video, I don't really care if I'm in the video. Like, it used to kind of creep me out, but it doesn't anymore. And you're on video everywhere you go. Every parking lot that you're in, every building that you enter, everywhere you go. I mean, you could just walk up to somebody's doorbell to trick or treat on Halloween with your kids, and there's a camera in your face on every house, every door. The doorbells have freaking cameras. You're always on camera. So what's the difference if I'm videoing something, holding it in my hand and talking to it and commentating and videoing something? But you could be videoing a car in a parking lot going like, yo, check out this car, man. Look at this. Look at how it went. And the owner could come over and be like, yo, I don't want you video. That's my private car, man. I don't want you videoing my car. I didn't give you permission to videotape my car. This is what's going on now. You're like, you drove from your house to this parking lot. You were probably on 8,000 videos. You know what I mean? And I would worry more about those. Those are the ones that could be taking pictures of you going through red lights or speeding or whatever else. Still changing lanes without signaling will be the next thing they're sending you tickets in the mail for. I'm just some dude in the parking lot appreciating your car. I don't know why you would be bugging on me. But that's how people act, and they go like, "Oh, you're videoing my plate. You got real close to the windshield, man. What are you videoing my VIN?" I'm like, so if I videoed the VIN, but that's my personal information. Anyone walking by your car can just look at it. So how is me videoing it any different? How is me at this gun show videoing guns? He goes, well, you're videoing the you could be, they could think that you're getting a serial number. So what? So I got a serial number on the video. So what? I could look right at the gun. I could pick up 800, every gun. I could pick up every gun at this gun show and look at the serial number and commit it to memory or put it down and then go over and write it down on a piece of paper, and I could have every single serial number of every gun here without using a camera, just using memory or just writing it down. Why would a camera change anything? I couldn't understand it, but it was going to be a nice video for you guys. I was just showing what I look at, what specifically I avoid, what specifically I look to buy. And you would think the guy would come over and he'd say, hey, if anyone's interested in anything here on my table, here's who to contact, something like that, which I think YouTube would have objected with, of course. And that's a whole other story. YouTube. Yeesh. New rules now. I don't do live streams, but you're not allowed to hold a gun or manipulate a gun or do anything with a gun on a live stream. I'm not even sure if it's allowed to just sit on a table. It's very unclear. But no more live streaming stuff with guns. And I was going to do some live streaming stuff from the range. That's the end of that. So this is dying fast, this whole YouTube thing with the guns. I'm telling you, it's not going to be long before guns are just not allowed on this channel at all. You know what I mean? By private people, like that or whatever. If you were showing like, well, I don't know. I could just imagine the restrictions would get so crazy that you wouldn't even be able to do what I'm doing right now. But I still can, and that's the end of that. I'm going to stop blabbing. That's 15 minutes of gun and 20 minutes of me talking about video cameras. But I just felt like, there's a big gap between the last gun video and this one, and it was me putting together that. I went to 2 gun shows, and I did kind of like a whole walk around and a whole thing, and I basically was told by a couple of people there, like, stop doing what you're doing, and you're not making people happy here, and I couldn't understand why. I would think it was a good way for exposure for the gun show and to talk about this hobby, but apparently people are just afraid of the camera. So the camera will stay in the Milsurp garage, and we will bring you more rifles. What is it? Is it Sunday? It's Sunday. It's Sunday right before Christmas. So I think I might throw down a nice, another video maybe tomorrow or early Christmas Eve, so that if you're visiting people or you're sitting around, you'll have this video, and I'll do another one. Maybe I'll just pick some random Milsurp, even if it's one that I've done before, and we'll put it out there just so you'll have something to show your relatives while you sit around a fire. You know what I'm saying? So that's the Trapdoor Springfield, ladies and gentlemen. And remember, look, even 4570 we have there. I was cycling these through my Winchester lever action. That's why they got a little scratched up. That's why you see some scratches on them. But Winchester lever actions can beat the crap out of brass. And look at these things. They're awesome. They handled it perfectly. They work like a charm. So that's realisticsnapcaps.com. All right. Coupon code at checkout is Milsurp Garage, MILSURPGARAGE, for 10% off your final bill, and there will be no shipping. So these will be as cheap as you could possibly get them, and and they are awesome. And that is that. So listen, I'm noticing that 88% of my viewers are not subscribers. That's crazy. So if you're watching this right now, subscribe. I got tons of stuff coming. What the hell are you waiting for? I'll see you all later. And if I don't see you before Christmas, happy holidays. And if I do, it's going to be legendary. I don't know.